So let's jump in and look at what was submitted by Mississippi and Colorado on a district in each of those places. So, Katie, do you want to kick us off? And we're hoping at this point that the folks from these states who helped submit this data can tell us a little bit about what they found and any issues and concerns that they had.
Great. Yeah, so as Marguerite mentioned, we had two submissions. The Gulfport School District in Mississippi submitted their analysis of their data at the district level, and the Colorado SEA did an analysis of one district in Colorado and submitted that. So this is not the full analysis. This is just an excerpt from each data set that they submitted, but it was really informative for us to see, and it was also, sounds like it was really informative for them to go through that particular process. So I'm going to unmute each of them and go through this individually. So Dana, I'm going to go ahead and unmute you first. So Dana, now you are able to participate if you so want to explain your process. But we would just love to hear kind of what you learned going through this. And then I also have at the bottom there some of the notes that you shared as well that stuck out to you, things that you said you needed to think about doing differently in the future as you move forward. So if you want to do any explanation of your analysis, that would be great.
Okay. I went through the data in detail, and one of the things I found is that we're coding some salaries for certain departments to the LEA when they are in fact probably assigned to a school. So that's something that we would need to look at in the future as we continue to code those people and make sure that we're coding everybody to a school to get a truer picture of those expenditures by school. Vocational expenditures were coded to a separate cost center when they in fact served students from the middle school and the high school, so we had to kind of consolidate those expenditures. And capital expenditures, I just assumed that meant construction, so I omitted those and left in equipment and things of that nature. And then another couple of things that I noticed is that we have alternative schools and dropout prevention programs that we were not necessarily able to assign to a certain school, even though we're serving students from each of those schools. And that's just some of the things that came out when I was doing the analysis.
Excellent. That's interesting, and I think that may be the case elsewhere, where there are students served, but the students aren't assigned necessarily to a specific school. And I'm adding that to our list of questions. At the same time, I will encourage you all to approach the Department of Ed directly with any kinds of questions like these, and we'll get some information out to you all about how to do that. But there are a lot of these tricky considerations. So question I think you might be asking is, if students are in a dropout prevention program or something like that, or maybe assigned to an alternative school doesn't have a school number, should those funds just go into the LEA level monies and be divided across all the schools, even though the students aren't assigned to these other schools, and how does that work? Or, do we make up a new school? So I don't want to put words in your mouth, but that's kind of what I was thinking.
Right. Well, we in fact would still report that ADA for those students at that school. So
okay.
It's, but not the expenditures.
I see. So, and I wonder, if that is a central service to serve students who've been maybe expelled or something else from another school, maybe it just does belong in the LEA level expenditures. But yeah, I can imagine there's going to be a lot of this tricky stuff. And if one district might choose to do it differently than another district.
Right.
Right. Nice work.
Great. Thank you so much, Dana. And we'll now move on to Colorado. So I will unmute Adam and Yolanda and let you all participate here. So Adam, you are unmuted, and Yolanda, you are unmuted as well.
And I would
so if
also
you all want to weigh in.
Yeah, others that remember you can raise your hand or type in comments in the question box.
Yeah.
Okay. This is Yolanda from the state of Colorado. In doing the analysis, we noted 3 items for the actually for the private sources, we're currently not yet able to identify and exclude gifts, grants, donations, so that's not part of our current analysis. Additionally, the impact aid is the only federal funds intended to replace local tax revenue that we were able to identify. We're not aware, we do not have a way to identify other sources, so curious if there's any other known sources out there.
That's a good point. I think on that one, the idea was the impact aid. That was the main one. However, during the stimulus plan, stimulus funds could have been considered state or local funds. And I know there are places where there's disaster relief or things like that, and sometimes federal funds can be done for that. But I don't think generally most districts will have anything else other than impact aid.
Okay. And then the last item was our food service, so that's not included in our current analysis. The reason being is one of the slides prior, I think it's stated not to include food service if the parent or student is paying.
Right.
So we just needed more clarification on that.
Yeah, I think that's going to be a messy area because from what I've seen in data, obviously the Department of Ed will do some supplemental funds for lunch, and then often parents pay into lunch. And so the regulation asks, and we'll show that again in a moment, that, in fact, I can go ahead and forward up to that, that it says in the including category, net expenditures to cover deficits for food services and student body activities. And so what they mean is just the state, local, or federal funding for those services. But in some districts, those may not be clearly separated once we're down to the school level. And I wonder if that may be what you were challenged with.
Yeah, that's the case for Colorado.
Yeah. So I think in one of those, I'm trying to, I don't know yet, but it may be the case that all food service expenditures could be deleted, and we can get into that in a moment. I can't remember if that's part of it. We'll look at that. But that may be an accounting challenge in lots of states. And then can you talk a little bit about the third column here? This is one where there was no LEA level expenditures.
Yeah, so the third column one there's, okay, so the one with the 1360
yeah, that was the
identified
chart
as the header, so that one is a charter school. So the LEA level expenditures would only apply to the direct schools within that district, where the charter school has a separate accounting and submission process.
And so all is at the school.
Yes, correct.
Right. And it looks like we have a question about where are the federal grant funds accounted for, such as Title I, Title II, etc. Those would all be, and those of you from these districts, correct me if I'm wrong, in that federal row. Those are the funds that are out there per pupil, both at the school level and the LEA level. That's where the federal funds would go.
Correct, yes.
Great. Lois, let me know if that doesn't answer your question.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments? Thank you for doing this. You can see that you can start to pull out the numbers, and it does tease out some of the issues that we have. But we can jump ahead to our next part, which is about a little bit more about this uniform procedure. And I think looking at examples like this explains why we might need a uniform procedure. Because if one district has a hard time with food services or trying to decide what to do about vocational, then other ones will have the same issues. And that's where the uniform procedure will come into play that the SEA produces. In the end, the data that get produced by this are only useful if they can be compared. So if each school in each district is accounting for its expenditures in a different way, then the numbers don't really mean anything. So that's where the uniform procedure comes into play, and why different states will need different uniform procedures.